more time. All right. All right. Thank you for coming back on. This is a big treat for me as I got the advanced copy of Bootcut recently and have been playing it all over the house. I hope none of the
Well done.
neighbors are ripping it from the airwaves, before it's out.
Frankly, I'm okay with it if they do. I'd be flattered.
um, I guess before we get started, can you once again tell us who you are, where you are, and what your main goal is with your art?
I am Afie, also known as Bahamas. Been playing music for a long time. This is my sixth album. It's called Bootcut, and comes out, I guess, next week. And I'm in Nova Scotia. I live in Nova Scotia. I've been here for 5 years. It's a wonderful place to live, and surrounded by water and rocks and trees and not much else. So that works really good for me. And my goal with my art was that the last question? I can't quite remember. But anyway, I mean, I when I was in high school and I discovered music pretty quickly, I started dreaming about what it would be like to be in a band and what would it be like to go on the road and what would it be like to write a song and what would it be like to make an album. And I am, with all the gratitude in the world, I can say that I've done all those things. And then frankly, that's all I've ever done. And it's been a long time since I did anything else professionally. And so, um, yeah, there's always sort of bigger challenges as a songwriter and as a singer and as a guitar player. There's always it's an endless the amount of things that you can kind of challenge yourself to. But yeah, I just feel very lucky that I get to be an artist every day. I get to wake up in the morning and kind of make stuff. Hopefully that's cool. I think it's cool. I hope other people think it's cool. And I get to play music with my friends and travel around and go to Boise, Idaho. Why would I have ever gone to Boise, Idaho if it weren't for music? You know?
It's the happening new spot that people are moving to,
I'm
apparently.
not sure if that's the case, but I'm happy to be there and happy to be in the game, If they need music, then I'm happy to go out. But yeah, I guess the goal is just to continue being an artist. I Some of the guys that play on this record are in their 70s, some in their 60s, and they were pretty thrilled to be playing together and just had so much enthusiasm. And I thought to myself at the end of the session, I'm like, that's all I want. I just want to be the guy who's 70 who gets a phone call from the 42-year-old guy saying, "Hey, are you available to come do some recording?" I mean, I'd be very lucky if the phone was still ringing 30 years from now.
Well, we last had you on here talking in 2020 about Sad Hunk. And I feel like as I've gotten to know your records through the years, it's like you're processing different cross sections of your life, through almost the style of your guitar playing,
Mm,
through the way that your voice is sort of unleashed or held back, you know?
hmm.
And I think you've become more comfortable displaying this softer side, this sort of
Sure.
more um uh maybe fatherly doting, like obviously you're a dad, but it's like
Hmm.
the sad hunk personality maybe was harkening back to your younger days when you were, displayed as this possible Canadian heartthrob rocker, right? Which I think even you knew wasn't really necessarily what was going on
Sure.
inside, you know.
Sure.
Um, but now you can kind of embrace this um, uh, more open personality, which is maybe why you chose to go to Nashville and harness this country feeling. The idea that you could
Hmm.
just openly say what you're feeling, tell stories from beginning to end without feeling like they're going to be cheesy or on the
Mm.
nose. because country music is without artifice, at least the good stuff, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like the old school stuff, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash. It's like they told you what was really going on inside them. And so much of the modern pop music and country music is hidden behind 7 layers of capitalism, or, like,
Mm.
can this sell the latest pickup truck, soft drink, beer
Hmm.
commercial, instead of saying what are you actually feeling right now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're talking about so many different things there. I mean, first of all, there is a real clear difference between making music and the music business. And that's always existed, in every genre, as far back as recorded music has existed. It's sort of, okay, we have something. Now, how do we want to sell it? Everything's a presentation, right? Does the story be like, oh, we recorded it live off the floor, and this guy just wears his own clothes on stage. He doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
all choices. It's all choices that we make. And for me, like over the last several albums, like I've leaned more into this idea of like, okay, this record is, called Sad Hunk. What are the photographs going to be? What's the marketing materials? Like I kind of like to have fun with the Instagram and all the stuff around the record. Like once I realized, oh, this is just an opportunity to make more art, make more interesting videos, make more, musical things or humorous things, like things that work well on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Suddenly that part of it just became much more interesting to me. Up to that point, I had really rejected that. I had thought, oh, the artists that I really love, they don't engage with this. Neil Young is somehow above it all, and uh, and Willie Nelson's above it all, and of course they are in so many ways, as artists or whatever. But I mean, um, then I just sort of like I said, I just realized it's fun. I just enjoy it. I just enjoy that part of it. So it's not like I'm gonna reinvent myself every time we make a record, but I do think having a record is an opportunity to kind of have fun, make interesting art that's not the music, that sort of supports the music, that's around the music. Um, and yeah, definitely like the Sad Hunk record sort of there was a extra incentive there just because we weren't touring and everyone's stuck at home. And so I kind of, pivoted to being like a mildly successful internet entertainer there for a couple of years, like most of
Yeah.
us did. But now it's sort of like trying to keep the best parts of that and returning to what was, my normal life, which was playing shows and connecting with people in that really direct, sort of tangible way that feeling that you get when you play shows, the best shows anyway, where you're just like that synergy happens and people are just so thrilled to be there. They're with their friends. They're like, I don't know. It's such a cliche, but it really is like such a high that I think most of us are chasing. Um, some shows are kind of get there, and then others you spend the whole show kind of trying to crack the code a little bit. But what is it? Why am I not finding that little space? Um,
Well, I
is
think
it a sonic thing?
it's going to be an interesting challenge, thinking ahead to how you'll tour this record,
Hmm.
because some of them are very stripped back,
Hmm.
very personal, very soft, Um, so, when I saw you last at the Regent here in LA, I think it was last year,
Hmm.
um, it did feel like you kind of were bringing us into your living room in Nova Scotia or something,
Right. Right.
and the 700-800 people that were there were like a part of your home in a way. And I
Hmm.
think this one
Hmm.
is even more intimate in a way. Like you have to like bring them into uh the back den, close all the doors, turn down the lights, and
Hmm.
uh, have you explored how you're gonna present certain songs, like like the piano ballad that ends the record is just
Hmm.
beautiful. Um
Hmm. We've been
like
playing that one like as a full band, like kind of more of an R&B, like almost like as if I had recorded it for Sad Hunk. We're kind of playing it in that world, and it really works really well in that way too. And I've never really been concerned with reproducing the albums
Yeah.
like note for note. I have a great band. Most of the people that I play with, I've played with for several years, and so I just try and do what works for us in that moment. And it's not to say that like it's a jam band where the songs are unrecognizable and they're different totally from night to night, but I love taking advantage of the notion that it could be that.
Right.
So, that means that, okay, some nights I might play a song solo. Like on the last record, I have this song, Half Your Love, that we recorded it as a solo tune. And this summer we're playing festivals and we play it as a band tune. And the guitar section, we just extend that. However, if it's feeling good, we'll play longer, shorter, whatever feels right. And just stuff like that. I feel like it's just an opportunity, especially now having 6 albums. There's a lot of material to choose from, and for better or for worse, I've never really had a hit song, so it's kind of a nice position to be at the beginning. I mean, I would have loved to have a song that really went off in a big way, but it just never happened for me. And now I'm kind of grateful because it just means that I can literally do whatever I want at the show. There's no like,
Right.
there's certain songs that we do play pretty consistently, but yeah, there's a good 30 to 40% of the set that can change night to night. And
Right.
even those songs I can play them solo, I can play them as a duo, or I can do them as a band, or yeah, so it's a luxurious place to be as a performer. It's not that I want to be selfish and be Bob Dylan and like set up my mic facing the drummer and just make it all about me. I mean, I certainly want to play a show and interact with people and stuff, but yeah, I don't stress about it too much about trying to recreate the album or whatever. Christine, who plays guitar with me, she also plays lap steel, which is quite good, and she can cover a lot of that ground. And as I'm sure it's the once you get the steel on something, it pushes it right away. It's suggestive of a whole world, a genre of music, so it's fun. It's fun to have that included.
I think there's an interesting bookend to this record, Bootcut, where you begin obviously with your your kids infiltrating this moment of greatness, possibly, like where look,
Sure.
I got the greatest melody ever happening here, and
Mm-hmm.
your daughter's like, I don't really care. Like I want you to do this thing for me real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This sort of cutting down to size of fatherhood in a way,
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't matter how many sold out dates you have, when you're home, you're dad, and that's as big as you're gonna be, right? But also
Yep.
that then you go into that first track, just a song about, what if I did create this greatest melody of all time?
Mm-hmm.
And then the end is almost, you're conceding that nothing is going to blow my mind. Everything is sort of borrowed and
Mm-hmm.
patched and
Mm-hmm.
uh, sewn together from, the stuff that you love, stuff you grew up listening to. Um, and you're sort of one more link on the chain. And that,
Mm-hmm.
and that we don't have to revolutionize music every time we record a new song. It is just another song. Um,
Yeah.
and yet I think that openness, that realization is sort of freeing, right? Where you can just be like, this is my little sketch of where my life is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Take it as it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm writing songs is the thing I love the most. That's the most satisfying part of my job, or that moment of inception where you can sort of squint with your ears a
Right.
little bit into the future and you say, wow, there's something there. There's something just in those chords or in that lyric. And the outline is all blurry. It's just not clear to you. Is it a verse? Is it actually a whole song? Is it just an idea? What is that thing? And when that sort of starts to reveal itself, it's so fleeting and so precious, and also just like so selfish and personal. Like it's really, and I revel in that. I really like enjoy that, and so, as a songwriter, you kind of have to be pretty ruthless with your time, and that's difficult to do if you have children. And um, so yeah, it is kind of nice to start the record like that, and with that little kernel of an idea, and then go right into the definitive version of this idea, this recording. But yeah, the last song is really just sort of about losing someone that means the world to you, and then I a lot of my songs sort of try and employ a little bit of humor just to lighten the load a little bit, because I tend to sing
Right.
about some pretty heavy subject matter. And so I find, for me, if you can get a little bit of sweet in with the salty, it sort of helps the whole mixture come together. And in previous conversations, I've always kind of referenced that Willie Nelson tune, "You Were Always on My Mind," because if you listen to the lyrics, it's like such a heartbreaking song, but the whole energy is just so uplifting. Like it's a
Mhm.
very upbeat melody, and it leaves you feeling positive, even though he's basically admitting, saying like, I couldn't do it, I'm not enough, I you were always on my mind, I just wasn't able to be there for you. And you know what I mean? It's like such a, it has both of the elements that I love. And so if any of my songs are able to kind of use that recipe a little bit, in order to sort of convey the message, I that always feels right to me and just lands in a good way.
Well, I think, your public persona, your PR packet
Hmm.
personality, um, is embracing this humorous dad core, like, look, I'm lifting weights,
Yeah,
but there's this edge that's in the back of these songs, sort of like a needle sticking out of the garment accidentally, right? I
sure.
mean, that
Hmm.
that sequence in Nothing Blows My Mind, I could shoot a hole in one, I could win a marathon run, both like kind of funny, upbeat things. And then
Yeah.
if my dad somehow said I love you, son, it's just a devastating line, right? Because it's not like, oh, if my dad said it, if he somehow said it, like he would never
Yeah.
say it, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea that
No,
your
I never
dad
did.
would
Yeah,
would never ever say that is a very heartbreaking sort of slap to the back of the neck, on
for
the way
sure.
out.
And then, the follow up is, you say those lines and then you say, "Still nothing blows my mind." You know what I mean? It's you've
Right.
just accepted that. And yeah, so again, like when I came up with that little sort of, that method of sort of listing off these different things, I could write the greatest tune, I could be first one on the moon, and all that, these different scenarios, and always with the idea of like, well, none of that would blow my mind. It's sort of just, the whole idea is you're saying, well, this other thing is the biggest thing in the world to me, this other
Right.
relationship, and the fact that that's ending is like, um there's nothing that even comes close. Nothing compares to you. I mean, there's another song that sort of has a similar motif or whatever. But yeah, I like I said, writing songs is such a thrill. I still enjoy it. I still try and drop what I'm doing. If I get an idea, I try and respect the idea and try and make room for it to come in, and try and crack the code on these songs. But I've also just become much more relaxed about it, and when the girls are bugging me or whatever, it's that's totally okay, and it's welcome. I love having them around, and I love, all my voice memos are just totally polluted with them.
Yeah.
They're all over every song, every idea that I have. I'm always singing into my phone, and it's just hilarious how much they're on there.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been posting um these videos since my daughter July was born. She's a year and a
Hmm.
half or so now, of like me playing songs to her, and then she keeps getting like a little bit bigger and a little louder basically in every video. It's like every month or so.
Hmm.
And it's funny because most people are like, oh, what a cool fun thing that you're doing. But there's some people, even people in my own band, they're like, I don't think you should post those videos. Like what if she doesn't like want to be seen, or like
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, she's sort of like a part of the band now. I mean, that's just the way it
Hmm.
is, like she's
Hmm.
literally like you know the mascot of the band. um
Right.
and one day when she's older, she may be like, Dad, this is like embarrassing for me. you know
That's well, she'll definitely do that,
yeah.
and that's just part of the life cycle, you know. I
Yeah.
certainly felt that way about my mother, who's a wonderful, loving person. At some point you get to that, no matter what.
Is there music that you heard your parents listening to, maybe, that sort of informed on this record? I feel like there is a almost easy listening
Mm.
element to this. And easy listening gets a bad rap in my world, because I feel like, oh, it's too smooth or too slick, but really it's like the music that comforted like an entire generation, or like that was sort of in the background of some of your nicest family memories or something.
Honestly, if I went into a record store and I found my own albums under the easy listening section,
Yeah.
I would be so thrilled. I mean, I relate to that much more than rock or pop or indie or whatever
Right.
other classifier. Um, yeah, it's my all that this musical discovery was really done on my own. My mother didn't really listen to music. My father wasn't around. My mother had a few Finnish, like traditional Finnish music cassettes that she would play on repeat, like when she was making dinner on Sundays. But no, all my musical discovery was done on my own and just through friends, through osmosis, you know. And it was I did like I guess you'd call it neo-traditional country. I'd like Alan Jackson and George Strait and Vince Gill and a lot of those guys sort of their recordings are often they're recorded so well, they're so clean,
Yeah.
um, and just arranged and produced so well that they do kind of go into the easy listening territory. I mean, certainly George Strait does, as much as he's country, I think it's kind of fits there too, But yeah, I think it's been interesting. Can I help you, sweetheart? I'm on a phone call right now. I'm on a phone call. Can we talk in a bit? Let's talk in a little bit. Okay, I'll be out in 1 sec. I touring with Jack Johnson was a real revelation, just because like we play these huge venues and he'd do like six sort of slow songs, not like mid tempo, but like
Yeah.
slow jams in a row. And
Yeah.
just watching like 20,000 people like loving every minute of it, it was such a
Yeah.
revelation to me because I probably like most performers, you tend to feel this pressure where you're like, okay, I got to play like a rocker and then a mellow one, and then you think that you have to kind of pace the show in some way that's like up and down to keep it going. And watching him play was just so, um, yeah, it was really inspiring because I just realized, geez, I have a lot of slow songs. I have a lot of mid-tempo, lost in the light, way with words, like that groove based kind of tunes. And um, so, realizing that I don't have to be on someone else's schedule, I can get on my own schedule, and that works real good. And actually, my wife and I, we were just in Toronto and we saw Chris Stapleton play,
Hmm.
and really like his music a lot too. And it was at a huge venue, and same thing. He's got a lot of these, more bluesy, obviously country tunes, but like there's no rush to rock out,
Yeah.
and the crowd is totally along for the ride. They're singing along with every word, and it's just beautiful and it's incredible. So I feel like I have something in common with those performers from that standpoint, where it's just like that's the type of show that I'd want to create. I want everyone to just feel warm and welcome, and you know just being in the audience at one of those shows is like just being at a family reunion, you know? So
Yeah.
Willie Nelson has the same quality too, right? It's just the minute he walks on stage, you just feel better. He's like the Dalai Lama. It's
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? It's something about just his presence before he even plays a single note has such an effect on people. So I think Jack has that too. I think a lot of people that I know have that. So trying to channel some of that is always a good move.
I heard that story that when Willie played the Fillmore in San Francisco a couple years ago, he like lost his voice or something, but he didn't want to cancel the show, so he just
Right.
had the audience basically sing the songs for him the whole night. Like it was just
Yeah.
like a almost like a choir practice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a similar video on YouTube of him and Casey Musgrave singing the Rainbow Connection.
Yeah,
And he was having a lot of difficulty getting the words out. Just looked like he was struggling. And the way that she supported him through that song was just amazing. Like she just, you could just sense the reverence and the respect that
right.
she had for him. And at the same time, she's like, gently put her hand on his arm and just said, "We're going to get through this." And just the second that he wasn't there in the right way, she was able to kind of cover it, and it was just beautiful, and it was just, I don't know, more and more of those kind of moments. I'm looking to experience those moments as a performer and as a fan, as a spectator.
Well, I think that first opening track, Just a Song, has the footprints of Willie through it, especially that
Sure.
harmonica part, feels like it
Hmm.
was dropped from, a 70s AM Willie track.
Well, it was actually Willie's harmonica player, right? Mickey Raphael
Well,
played on this record a fair bit, so
yeah.
it's hard to have Mickey come play on your record and not lean in that direction. But I think it makes it better, and he's just a wonderful person to be around too.
What was it like recording, the Sound Emporium in Nashville with folks like Vince Gill? I mean, I know you noticed you you mentioned that, the basketball metaphor that it's nice to be Steve Kerr sometimes, not sort
Yeah.
of Michael Jordan in the room. As a Bulls fan from Chicago, I appreciate that. But the idea that you can kind of harness the greatness of a place and still have your voice driving it, but how did you sort of delegate the egos in the room? Like how did that work?
I mean, if there were egos in the room, I don't think it was a bad thing. I think a lot, in my experience so far, working with people who are a little bit older, they tend to have a sort of a quiet confidence about what they're doing. They've
Uh-huh.
seen every different type of chord change, and they've been in every type of studio. They've just seen more music, played more music, just been in more situations, solved more problems, more musical problems.
Yeah.
And so they bring all that experience and wisdom with them. And I certainly can't help but be um, inspired by that and just made to feel comfortable. And that makes me play better and sing better when you're around that type of energy. As opposed to if you're around someone who maybe they're really talented, but they're kind of overplaying, or
Yeah.
their excitement and their nervousness sometimes. And even I do that. I mean, I certainly overplay when I'm not quite confident with what I'm supposed to be doing. I might lean too far in the direction of overplaying or over singing. And you always want to remind yourself, you always want to be like the cool guy in the back who's just holding it down. To me,
Yeah.
Malcolm Young is to me forever more interesting than Angus Young. Angus Young is an incredible guitar player. He's running all over the place, and he's like 80% of the show. But Malcolm Young is just like the rock that the whole band is like built around. And so to me, I feel like when you're making a record and you have like a room full of Malcolm Youngs, it really sets the tone in such a nice way. And then you can invite a Mickey Raphael or Vince or Sam Bush or some really tasteful, beautiful player to come in and just elevate the whole thing to that other level.
Well, I think, you maybe are part of a group of guitar players that are more melodic than uh histrionic or something. It's like there's the guitar
Hmm.
players that you can sing their guitar solos in a way,
Hmm.
right? Which I always appreciate. I think there's people that don't get maybe their due as some of the great guitar players of our age. Mike Campbell, for example,
Hmm.
of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I feel like he's never on like the list of like, oh, this guy is a, you know, can't live without electric guitar player. But it's like he never goes like too far in those Petty tracks. It's just like exactly where the track needs to go. And he's
I,
sometimes just
I
playing the melody
agree.
or like lifting it exactly where it needs to go.
I mean, he's such a great example. Although I would say I've never heard a musician ever say a bad thing about Mike Campbell. Everybody
I think
totally
they don't talk about him
understands.
enough. I think they don't talk about him enough.
I agree, but I think uh, most people do understand how much a guy like that, a player like that, really contributes to a band, and how actually how much sort of musical maturity is required to play like that. Um,
Restraint.
I
It's like a lot of restraint.
restraint, yeah, and I think if you ask him, he's probably like, "Hey, it's just the way I play," or whatever. But um, I think that it's just he's such a great example. I mean, I think you nailed it on the head. He's really just that's the pocket that I would always love to be in. Like I said, I feel like when I'm whether it's at a show or in the studio, if I'm not quite comfortable, I might overplay, and it's Mike Campbell is just such a great reminder. It's just find the melody, just hang out with the melody, find a rhythmic thing that really just adds another layer of groove, of rhythm to the song. All those things always mean so much more than the super dexterous up and down the neck kind of playing.
Well, you have that
I
song "Working on My Guitar," where you mention, a bit tongue in cheek that it's like, well, if you play the wrong note, just play it twice, just play it again, you know,
Yeah, I mean that's sort of an old
lean
jazz
into it.
joke or
Yeah,
something, but
yeah.
I totally agree. And I recently I saw a Victor Wooten video where he was just sort of doing some sort of clinic or a workshop or something, and he was doing this exercise where there's a guitar player playing a little riff, a little motif, and he purposely plays every note but the right note. And he's like, it doesn't have to be the right note to be music. Like any note works. You can make any note work. And he sort of demonstrates this in real time.
Right.
And everyone's laughing. And it's really like, it really is musical and incredible, actually, right? You think this guitar player is just riffing on E or something, and he's just playing F, an E flat, and like every note that you really shouldn't play. And it's somehow all musical and groovy and working. And it's, so yeah, I'm interested in exploring those types of things as a singer, as a player, and as a writer. It's when you find those lyrics that kind of have that same quality that shouldn't work but do, or that sort of draw you in, um, or the setup, the two-line setup, and then the devastating line closer or whatever. It's like those things are just so satisfying as a writer and as a singer. So. I feel like there's a lot of that on this record, and it's just so far we've probably played 4 or 5 songs from this album, like over the summer at the festivals and stuff, and obviously we'll play a bunch more over the fall. But yeah, it's just been fun. It's been fun kind of letting those songs evolve, and in fact, some of the songs like I'm just singing different lyrics. Like the working on my guitar, I probably wrote 10 verses for that, and we ended up with the record the way it is. But there's just every night I'm feeling different. Like that I have this one lyric for that said, I'm so happy just to be on stage. I don't need to be the next Jimmy Page. I'm just working on my guitar. And just stuff like that where it's again like a little more humorous, a little bit more fun. Like it's just if you're playing in a hot, sweaty bar, it feels fun to be able to sort of like elevate the songs in some new way.
Do you see yourself as a guitar player first or as a singer songwriter first? Like when a song comes together, are you, you know, strumming sort of a set of chords and then the song blooms from that, or like what starts first, or is it totally different every time?
Um, I think if you asked me 10, 15 years ago, I would have immediately said I'm a guitar player. And but more and more, most of my time is on songwriting and being an artist and just coming up with ideas of how to put songs across, or all the things around the album. Like I said, I'm enjoying that process, and with the images and the videos and all that stuff, like that part of being an artist is just so much fun to me these days. So I definitely spend much more time there. I don't practice the guitar the way I did at one time, and I would like to, but I find time is a little bit elusive for practicing. But I used to spend hours and hours and hours a day playing guitar, and my playing kind of plateaued. And then at the same time, I realized, oh, the songwriting is actually the thing that's going to give me a career. And I started just focus on that a lot more. And I felt like my guitar playing kind of just stayed there while the songwriting went up. And I would just recently, as crazy as it sounds, I feel like I've just made some very small gains, very minor gains, where the guitar playing starting to catch up a little bit, and I can actually execute some of these things that I'm hearing in my musical mind. But I'm also spoiled. I'm surrounded by great guitar players. So Christine, who tours with me, is like, she's my favorite guitar player, and just a continual source of inspiration. The way she plays, she's just a great listener. Like, she
Mm.
really is an incredible listener, and um, I think most great players are great listeners.
Well, in a way, there's two different brains that you have to have, because if you think about it, most lead guitar players are not listening to lyrics. At least a lot of the folks that I've always played with, even
Hmm.
some of my best friends who've been in my bands, they're like, "Oh, so that song's about your grandpa who died?" I was like, "Dude, we've been
Hmm.
playing this for like 7 years." You know,
Yeah.
it's like their brain is so focused on this path that I can't even imagine how to play some of the stuff that they play. But you somehow have both of those brains.
Mm.
Do you feel like you're almost switching between the two live, or is it just natural at this point?
Um, yeah, there's a part of it that's like walking or breathing. It's just it is who you are, right? If I We all have a gait, we all have a way that we speak, we all have a way that we do these things, and so the best thing to do is just not think about it and let it happen. But you're always kind of dancing on that line, right? Because my favorite moments of the show are when I'm fully awake, I'm there, but I'm not really focused on what I'm doing. I'm, you know, for lack of a better term, I'm just feeling it. I'm in the music.
Yeah.
And that really just feels wonderful. And it's also so fleeting because you can get distracted by a bum note or something that's going on in the audience or something that someone else plays. And then you realize, oh, I want to take this up another gear. And then you're sort of using that more active part of your musical um, muscles, your musical mind. And yeah, that part is important, but less interesting to me. So I think I'm trying to just spend more time in the more intuitive part of playing, and
Right.
just sometimes that means just playing one note or two notes and just sort of
Mm.
staying in that pocket until it reveals itself. What is it exactly that I was sort of getting after here? I've really been enjoying like Goose, that band Goose. That
Mm.
I was never really big jam band fan in a huge way. And then I heard some of their tunes, and it really made sense to me. Like, more is more, kind of. I just really enjoyed it, and so that's been inspiring me to just kind of like take some of my tunes, which maybe I've played in the same place, and try and move them into a different place. Not again, not to overplay, but songs that you've been playing for 10 years in standard tuning, just put your guitar and drop D and play the same song,
Right.
or don't play guitar and just see what the band does without your kind of influence from the guitar, and see what happens there.
I think a song like Sports Car, again, drops us into this part of your maybe your life where you could imagine what it was like before kids, or like if you never had kids,
Mm,
the sort of disconnect between yourself now and yourself if you got a sports car instead of having kids, this version of the self that maybe focused more on hedonism and pleasure, you
mm,
know, and for some reason it reminded me of this video that's gone viral. I don't know if you're on TikTok or and all that, but this poor woman just, she's like, I'm 29 and single, and I don't know if you've seen this, but she's like, I don't have kids, and so today I just I wanted to make shashuka, the special egg dish, and then I'm
mm-hmm,
gonna, uh, maybe go to Beyonce concert, and I can do whatever I want because I don't have kids, and that's okay for
mm-hmm,
me, And all these conservative commentators started using her as like the example of like the broken, like millennial Gen Z selfishness or something. That like
mm-hmm,
if you don't have family and kids, that you're not sacrificing yourself to a greater good, and you're just a
mm-hmm.
selfish hedonist. She's like, I just thought I was gonna make eggs this morning and go to Beyonce tonight,
Interesting,
in
interesting.
my sports
Well,
car.
no, I missed out on all that. I mean, I the internet is more and more. Unfortunately, I just think it's. I hate to use the word toxic because I do think it's kind of overused, but it is toxic. I think you got to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume that she's genuine and feels that way about her own life. And if that's the case, and you're not hurting anybody else, then rock on, sister. Do whatever you want. Go to Beyonce every night of the week. Eat whatever you want for breakfast. For me, I can say, I had music. I love music. I really centered my whole life around music. And then I had children, and that was infinitely better than anything I've ever achieved in music.
Right.
So for me, if I was speaking to her or someone directly about the issue, I would just say, well, for me, it's not even close. I love playing music, and I've had a little bit of success in it and got to play with people that I really love, and got to travel the world. I got to do all this great stuff under the guise of music, and none of it even comes close to when your kid runs up to you and gives you a hug. Um, so if you know that, if you actually know that, I mean, you know, I wish we started earlier. I wish we had 10 kids, but that's just
Careful what
me.
you wish for. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what the internet, maybe I'll be the target of someone else's ire after saying that, but we do we do live in a time when you can do whatever you want, and everyone seems to have an opinion about what everyone else should be doing. And I have a hard time relating to that particularly because it's like, to me, it's like, why are there so many people that are spending so much time seeking out things that they don't like? And then further to that, they're spending time telling other people that they don't like those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that thing's not for you. Just why don't you tell me about what you actually are interested in? That is
Yeah.
so much. That's such a better world to be in. It's like, but the internet tends to reward negativity and cynicism and all the kind of worst parts about what fascinates us. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised.
Well, again, you have these lines that sort of trade in humor and then hit you with the sort of little knife in the side, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I could tell you now because you're a grown man that when you were first born, I almost named you Trans Am, which would be a funny name for a kid.
Hmm.
What I wanted was a sports car, and you were not a sports car, right?
Hmm.
I think there are people, and this is something that is very hard to talk about, who do regret having kids, or they miss their old selves that they're never going to get back, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I, I guess as a still a new dad, kind of feel like you in that this is like the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Hmm.
I don't really miss my other life because she's now part of that same life, right?
Hmm.
Like I think you got to like bring your kids into the party, bring your kids into the music. That's the whole sort of fun part for me, is seeing how she reacts and sort of um contributes to the art.
Hmm.
She's
Sure.
like almost like the main muse for me now. I mean, it's
Well,
like I'm writing
for
for her,
sure.
which is really cool.
It happens automatically, I think. Yeah, and you just kind of, when you're a musician, so much of my world is about me.
Right.
And it is very important to me and for my family life for it not to be all about me all the time. And a lot of it is, right? Like my family does come on tour with me a fair bit, and they're quite literally living in my world, you know? It's it's just that's just how it is. And I feel fortunate to be able to include them on a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, it's like we have a very robust and meaningful life outside of my music. If and when I stop doing it professionally, I'll always be a musician. I'll always have a guitar and I'll always play and write songs. But I have no doubt that we could have a meaningful and robust life that's not about me. That's just, if one of my daughters gets into tennis or something like that, and I'm just like another guy who's driving them around the tennis tournaments, it's like, bring it on. I would love that. It sounds wicked.
What if your kids are like, Dad, I know maybe you don't recommend this, but I want to be a touring singer-songwriter. I'm almost like to be
I
like,
mean,
is there
no, I
like that
think
moment where
that's
you're like,
great.
wait, are you sure? Or is it just like, do
No,
it?
absolutely no. I think if they show any enthusiasm, you have to fan the flames, and if it's underwater welding, or if it's being a singer songwriter or ringette or whatever it ends up being, I think the goal is to really like fan the flames of their passion. Um, I think whether it's my own kids or anyone else, I would say it's never been a better time. Like
Mm,
the barriers to entry are way lower than they used to be. Of course, you have to deal with the economics that we're living in, and um, all the sort of the harder parts of modernity, which is navigating all the detritus that's out there too, right? There's just so
right.
much stuff, and sort of finding a way to get your stuff elevating a little bit so people have a chance to hear it is the challenge. But I mean, when you think about, even when I started, and I'm not that old, but I've been playing for 20 years, like we recorded my first albums on tape, not because it was like a novelty, but that's what the studio had. And and you needed a label and you needed like infrastructure to kind of do a lot of this stuff. And it's like now, like you could use the same laptop that we're doing the Zoom call, like is basically what we record on.
Yeah.
And um and you can upload your own songs, and you can make your own Instagram page, and you can really promote yourself. If you want to, you can do that now. And not that long ago, these tools just weren't available to us. So in many ways, I think it's if it's something that you're passionate about, I just would encourage people to pursue it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have mixed feelings now as a creator that maybe hasn't been able to, feel financially secure in a while.
Hmm.
Because that's the thing that's, becoming more scary as like you feel like you are responsible for this little person.
Hmm.
My wife got laid off a couple
Hmm.
months ago, and it was always like, well, she always has the good, stable salary job, and it's like not anymore.
Hmm.
And so all of a sudden, there's a lot of these doubts where you're like, I just was again touring Europe for 10 days. Um, and there was some travel mayhem that happened with a lot of bands. Flights got canceled, you had to book all this new
Hmm.
stuff, you lost all sorts of money, and it's just like so great in some ways. You're playing through for 5,000 people in Denmark and people know your songs, and then the next day you're sitting on a on the floor of the airport figuring out, do we have enough money to book all these new flights for 7 people? And, and the stress level was so high that I'm just like, do I want that for her? But
Well, but
it
it's
was so
just it's
10 hours ago. That's like, it's like the highs and the lows are so extreme that, you know, I am having these moments now where I'm like, yes, I should probably find something that can be more secure while still doing music, but I don't know what that is, because I
well,
love this so much.
well, so much of what you're talking about is your sense of identity, or at least that's what it sounds to me, right? And all I would say was you were an artist and you were a musician before anyone else recognized that you were an artist or a musician.
Right.
And that's why I say for me, if my career ended tomorrow, I would still be a musician. I would still be an
Of
artist. I
course.
would still play music, you know? Like that's where you realize, wow, it's actually for me to define who I am. What are the
Right.
things, you're saying, okay, I'm a father now, I'm a husband, I'm a musician, all these things. That's for you. That's for no one else. And
Right.
when you do have a bit of success, I mean, we've seen it so many times. Like people, they really can mess their life up because they confuse their identity with what other people think of them, right? And if you have a lot of success really quickly, that could be just crushing. That can destroy people
Yeah.
because they don't have their identity kind of solidified. And so they have this meteoric rise, and then quite often, just as quickly, they're irrelevant. And so you're like, wait a second, who am I? I just was taken on this roller coaster. Um, So yeah, I mean, you're like I said, you're all those things already. Whether you're on tour, whether you're not on tour, whether you're making money, whether you're not making money, um, you are all those things. And so, in some ways, you can take comfort in that, right? And I would say musicians and artists are in a lot of ways they're better prepared for navigating the gig economy and modern working life, part-time jobs, or a combination of doing different jobs that ultimately add up to earning a enough money to support you and your family and stuff. It's like musicians they've been doing that forever.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people getting laid off and having trouble. They're graduating with degrees and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and they're having trouble, just as much financial trouble, figuring it out.
Right.
I don't think that's exclusive to being a musician. Um, I think for a lot of people, they do like the illusion of security, that can kind of come with more traditional paths, that appeals to a lot of people. But I'm not sure if I believe in it, frankly. I think if you work for someone else, then you're not in control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That to me is insecurity. I think under the guise of a pension and 401k and all this stuff, like it can feel that way until the second you're let go, or your boss tells you, you know what, I'm shutting the business down.
Right.
I'm gonna go surfing in Bali or whatever. It's like, so yeah, I think I would say having your own something that's your own, whether it's music that you can control how much effort you put into, is really, there's just so much there. There's so much to be gained from it. Um, and you gain in my experience, like all the best stuff is actually at the lowest point, right? When
Mm.
everything's going good and you're winning, it's like that's easy. You don't really develop when you're winning. You
Yeah.
develop like when you kind of like it's hard and you can't figure it out and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing right now? How am I supposed to get through this? And you actually thread the needle and make it all work, and you make it to the end of the tour, and like no one's patting you on the back, but you get to just have that little moment being like, man, we did it. We landed the plane. And that to me is more satisfying than like the big wins or whatever.
In your international touring career, is there one horrifying day that like you remember, that like when things went so wrong that you wondered if Mercury was in retrograde? That's what I started to believe. I was like, wait, I don't think that's a real thing, but didn't they just say that Mercury is in retrograde? All these planes got canceled, our hotels got canceled, the vans got canceled. Like, what is happening?
I mean, I think there's only been a few shows where I really blew it, and I feel like I've kind of understood that now and understood what my how I handled it was not the way to handle it. And so yeah, I'm a big believer in that whole concept of extreme ownership, right? Like if something happens, it's my band. It's like it's on me, right? It's
Yeah,
not I don't turn around and snap at the bass player. That's my bass player. Like it's my job to lead the band to glory or whatever. I remember one time I was touring solo, and when I tour solo, I usually just tour with an acoustic guitar. It doesn't have a pickup or anything in it. You know, we just mic it up. And that works fine if you're doing your own shows. In this case, I was opening for this like dubstep band in Berlin, at this like, noisy club. Everyone's smoking, drinking. And I get up there and like, I couldn't hear anything. Like it was
yeah,
like Beatles at Shea Stadium. Like I just couldn't hear myself. What I was doing didn't feel like it was translating anywhere. The place was packed. But I played 5 or 6 songs and then I didn't flip out. I just sort of was like, all right, thanks so much for having me. Good night. And I walked off. And the promoter was like, what are you doing? Like, play a few more songs. You have more time. And I was like, no, I don't like it's not working. And he was kind of like, okay, cool. Like he was fine. But then I heard afterwards that there were people there at the show who had driven like, from Dusseldorf or whatever. Like they'd
right.
driven hours to come see me play and they were bummed, you know? And suddenly I was like, oh, right. I was I thought it was all about me. It's
Yeah,
it's never about me. It's not about me. It's about them. Those guys came. They were psyched to hear Hockey Teeth and whatever other tunes that they were digging on at the time. And like I just wasn't able to deliver. And
right.
that really bummed me out for a long time. And I've kind of, you know, since then, like I don't really get bogged down in sonic problems. The way I think a lot of artists do. If it's like, oh, it doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, I can't do the thing I want to do. It's like you can always do something. You can always figure out a way. And so again, like that low moment was probably like a massive learning experience for me. And I have had many like that. So just trying to take the high road in all those situations is always the play, I think.
All right, let's go out with maybe the one true banger on the record. Gone,
Sure.
Girl Gone. Love the crunchy guitar leading it, but I think that again there's there's some edge in here that I really appreciate. We all have the ex, the sort of the lady or whoever was in your past that it was like an irresponsible choice and yet it was like the best thing at the time.
Sure.
you know um
Yeah.
Tell me about sort of going back in time and creating this song. Like how did this happen?
Um, well, I just sort of had the way the chord changes there to me are kind of maybe the more interesting thing. Like it on its surface, it just sounds like a straight ahead kind of blues song, but the way the chords change in the middle of the beat and everything kind of to me just feel special and unique. And I just love that as a platform for writing. Same thing for this song. I probably wrote like 20 different verses. Um, and you've heard it. It's sort of a get the groove going and then just stay in that groove for 4 or 5 minutes or. But I like to try and include little hints of modernity in the lyrics. Like for instance, I sing about OnlyFans, and I just try and hint at things so that it doesn't sound. There's no part of me that wants to be nostalgic or old timey,
Right.
and so I try and just sort of get that message across in the lyrics, because it would be so easy with a song like that to sort of go in that direction. And that's really the challenge to me, is like, how do you pull a song like that off and it sound fresh and new and of the time we're living in? And so lyrics are, I think, are really the main point. And every line in that song, it's just fun. I just love singing it, you know? Can't get her out of my head. I was coming off the pain meds, still sleeping on a sofa bed. Like, it just paints a picture that somehow I'm interested in. That's sort of dark and and tragic, but somehow I still want to be there, you know?
The idea that you're happy being out of touch, I think
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Yeah.
a lot of us need to
It's
be with the internet. It's like you can be only so far into that uh toxic whirlpool before it starts to burn you.
right,
I mean,
right.
I appreciate TikTok and some of these, platforms as honestly learning tools. I mean, I cook a lot of recipes from stuff I find on TikTok every
Really,
day,
eh? Wow.
because that's where the algorithm has now like shaped itself for me. But like when
Mm,
I first got on there, it was half naked teenagers basically
hmm.
dancing, and you're like, you could see the danger behind various doors. It's just like somehow you have to like get in front of the right doors or something, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, geez, I mean that's there's smarter minds than me certainly working on this and debating this from both sides, but um it would seem that the internet, maybe it started with this idea of like this idealistic, oh, it's going to be this free space where people can do whatever they want and they can communicate and no one's going to get in the way. And it's totally turned into the opposite thing completely, you know? And so for me, I have to put boundaries. I don't, I have other people who do the posting and who manage the accounts, and um I just get the fun of making the videos. I get to make the art, and then I have to admit that I don't have the capacity or the desire to really go much further than that, you know? Um
Yeah.
and so each one of us kind of figures out where that line is and what feels good to us, and so yeah, I am happy being out of touch to some degree. I'm sure that video of that woman's breakfast was riveting, and but I'm okay not knowing about it too, you know?
Well, I wonder how I can keep my daughter safe from the like darkness that is behind door number 3,
Hmm.
um and I think maybe um it's up to us as gatekeepers to be like, yeah, there's a beautiful part of this world, and a dark, scary part of the world, and I hope that she can uh know which path to choose,
Hmm.
because
Well, lead the
we're,
way.
yeah, I mean,
You just got to
because at a
lead the
certain
way, you
point,
know?
it's like not up to me. Like she's her own person.
That's right. No, you got a lot of years before that. You got to worry about being left alone. But yeah, I mean, we gotta not be afraid to exercise parental authority.
Yeah.
And all that means is just model the behavior, right? I think we've all, um, we've all come to a point with smoking or drinking where, yeah, you kind of know that there's a line, or what are you going to do in front of your kids, right?
Right.
What kind of behavior around those two things are you going to model in front of them? For most modern parents, they're at least aware of it and make some effort to limit that exposure, right? Um, and I think we're just most people are just they just haven't caught up yet with regard to the technology. I think I was reading about drunk driving. Like, they didn't have rules around drunk driving for the first like 50 years of automobiles.
Yeah.
Automobiles existed. People were getting wasted and crashing into each other, and it never dawned on anyone like, maybe we should put some rules around this.
And there weren't even
Maybe we should
seatbelts.
say, well, yeah, and but even once they got the seatbelts, it was like there was nobody even talking about the fact that, like, And now, if you drove drunk, you would feel so much shame because you know how dangerous that is, not just to you and your family, but someone else's family and all that stuff that we just now is just understood. And I think that the technology it's the same thing. We know how dangerous this is, but most people are just not there yet. They're not willing to put really defined boundaries, not just for their children, but for themselves. And I would imagine, and I hope that in 20 or 30 years, there's no discussion about, hey, why do you have your phone out at the supper table? It's just everybody knows that you don't do that because you
Right.
don't do that because it's not a good idea. You know, I think that in 20 years, if your kid can make eye contact with someone and introduce themselves and say hello and shake hands with someone, that's going to be a superpower. And I would encourage all parents to just spend lots of time in that world. These products, like the thing that you and I are talking on right now, it's so intuitive. No one had to teach me how to use an iPhone. Like
Yeah.
it's set up out of the box for like a 2-year-old to just swipe and
Yeah.
it's literally designed that way. And I would say find the other things in your life that are maybe require a little bit more effort, but are so much more rewarding, whether
Yeah.
it's playing guitar or surfing or whatever else you can get into. It's like just find something that's harder to do. You'll feel better at the end of the day, I think.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, right on.
Well,
Well, thanks for the call.
I'm looking forward to seeing this boot cut in person.
Yeah, we'll see you in LA in a few weeks, I guess.
What is are you playing a Nokia Theater? Did I see that? What's the place that you're playing?
We're playing at some festival in a couple weeks called
Oh, Beach
Beach
Life. Yeah,
Road
yeah.
or Beach Life.
Beach.
And
Yeah.
then we're back and maybe a week or two later we're playing frankly, I'm not exactly sure what the venue is.
Let's
Um
find out right now, folks.
yeah,
Thanks to the power of the internet, the
power of the
Palace
internet.
Theater. The
Palace
Palace
Theater.
Theater.
Is that a good spot? Uh, I don't know it.
I don't actually know where that it must be downtown. Must be one of those
Right.
Friday the 29th. Oh, so you're playing Hardly Strictly. Our band's also up there. Oh,
Great.
maybe I'll see you on that.
Awesome. We'll look
Very
forward
good.
to run into you, man. Thanks again
Yeah,
for the
man.
call and yeah, enjoy, man. Enjoy the time
Oh,
with the family.
always appreciate what you do, man. It means the world that you can get on here with me. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Right on,
All right,
brother.
man.
Have a good day.
Bye bye.
Cheers.